Antonio Pierce will speak to the media today and open up training camp as practice will officially begin on Wednesday. Got some storylines that I'll be paying attention to. That plus more on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for July 23rd, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. Show grows each and every day, and that's because of you and my man Ari. Ari does a fantastic job making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, we're sounding good. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. And again, he does a fantastic job. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Anytime you want to be a part of the show, hit up that number. Again, 707-654-4693. We will get your calls and texts coming up in segment number 3. Plenty of feedback to get to, so we'll do that then. Segment number 2. It's funny, I feel like I've been dogging ESPN lately, and I don't do it on purpose, and I do understand that I'm an ESPN employee, but more times than not, they've been saying stuff that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And they have their power rankings and they have their future power rankings as well. Basically what they think of organizations across the National Football League in the next 3 years. And let's just put it like this. The Raiders didn't do too well. So we'll talk about it coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes. And really it just has to do with training camp and it opening up and Antonio Pierce speaking with the media today. So we're excited about that. We'll get into that as soon as I tell you about LinkedIn Jobs, which is the title sponsor. They help you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So we are here in Costa Mesa. Of course, that's where training camp is going to be for the Silver and Black until they break camp and head to Minnesota for the first preseason game of the season or the preseason. So excited about that. Antonio Pierce is going to speak to the media today around noon. So depending on what time you're listening to this, he may be talking right now, or he might have already got this thing wrapped up, whatever the case may be. It's supposed to be right around 12 o'clock that he's supposed to meet with the media. And it's funny, had a couple people hit me up from my radio station, was like, okay, well, what do the rookies look like? They reported already. And I was like, no, I told you the rookies, they all gathered in Henderson at the facility. The veterans are gathering in Henderson at the facility. The Raiders are actually taking a flight here to Costa Mesa. And then that's when Antonio Pierce is going to speak. So the whole team will arrive at some point today, and that's when AP will make his way to Jack Hammett. And I've kind of surveyed the land now that I'm here officially in Costa Mesa. I got here on Sunday night, and I was cruised by the facility and just checked it out. And they have a lot of it like black tarped off, so you can't really see into the practice. But looks like it's going to be, some really good fields. Look like they're in really good conditions from what I was able to see. And looks like we're going to have a really good vantage point to be able to check out training camp. But we'll really get boots on the ground today when we make our way over there and talk to Antonio Pierce and hear what he's got to say, kind of give the state of the team and set the tone for training camp. And it's exciting because, a week from today is when the pads will go on for the first time. Like, how exciting is that? First time the Raiders will be in pads. Will it be a week from today? No, maybe it'll be a week from, Wednesday is the first day of practice. So I'm sorry. It is. Yeah, the 24th. 7, do the math, carry the math. Yeah. So a week from today, it'll be the first day of pads, the 30th. Let's just put it like that. That'll be the first day. So the Raiders will be in start practice on the 24th. And then by the 30th, they'll be in their in their pads. So that's something to look forward to. And really, I've got 3 little storylines that I'm really trying to focus in on training camp. And of course, there'll probably be something else that'll pop up one way, one how, depending on, what the tone of training camp looks like. But I've got 3 notes that I jotted down as far as kind of the not talking points, but really storylines that I'm paying attention to. Obviously, storyline number 1 is going to be the quarterback competition. I mean, that's a no-brainer. We knew that. We've been talking about the quarterback competition for months, right? The quarterbacks are the reason why a lot of folks don't believe that the Raiders are going to be very good. Maybe they're right? And maybe they're wrong. I mean, only time will tell, but starting on Wednesday is when they start to put the pieces together and they start to figure out who is going to be QB1. So that's the easy one. That's storyline number 1 for Raiders training camp. Storyline number 2, I think, is a lot more intriguing, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about it. That's the health of the offensive line. And I say that, and I say it very optimistically. What we saw in OTAs and mandatory minicamp and even rookie minicamp was guys out there participating, but you also saw guys get banged up. Jackson Powers Johnson, he participated in rookie minicamp, looked great. Then at OTAs, he didn't, well, really appear. He was out there for one practice and left early, and then he wasn't there the rest of the way. And then mandatory minicamp, he showed up, but he didn't really look like he was doing a whole lot. I have real high expectations for that rookie, but he's got to be healthy, right? And then you got Colton Miller. Colton Miller, the left tackle, he didn't do anything all off season long. Now he was out there. He was, kind of watching and observing, getting mental reps, and even talking to JPJ, kind of giving him a little bit of his veteran knowledge, but he wasn't out there practicing. And, everyone says, well, you don't need Colton Miller out there to practice. And sure, you're right. We all know what Colton Miller brings to the table. We know who he is, and we know how great he could be when he's out there healthy. But remember, in 2023, he actually missed games, which is something that Colton Miller does not do. So I'm really hoping that he's going to be as healthy as we expect him to be, and hoping that he's out there for the first day of practice and get him going. I know the Raiders will take it easy on him. They'll take it slow on him. If he's not ready to go, they won't start him right away. We should find out about the PUP list, if there's any players that they're going to put on the PUP list. And I'm hoping that neither one of those offensive linemen start on the PUP list, right? I'm hoping that the Raiders don't have any guys that start on the PUP list, but it's very rare that teams don't have anybody. So I'm sure somebody will pop up that's recovering from some kind of offseason surgery that's not going to be good to go for the start of training camp. So we should find that out pretty soon. AP may tell that to us today, or we might find out Wednesday before the start of the actual practice going on. But the health of the offensive line, if Colton Miller and Jackson Powers Johnson can be healthy and that offensive line can come together, I think it'll be really good. But those two dudes have to be healthy. If they're not, if they look like that they're going to miss some time, or they've suffered a setback or two, or that could all of a sudden be real detrimental for our offensive line that needs to be put together quick, fast, and hurry. Got to figure out how to protect the quarterback and obviously open up some holes in the run game with the new running back in Zamir White and Alexander Madison. So those are the first two: quarterback competition and the health of the offensive line. The third storyline that I'll be paying attention to: who's going to emerge as the player that we're not talking about, right? I talked about this on my radio show on Monday. There's always a player that emerges that we aren't talking about heading into camp, and all of a sudden coming out of camp, we're really talking about in a major way. And the example that I gave was Max Crosby a few years back when Yannick Ngakoue was signed by the Raiders as a free agent, and he came to the team. And I remember being at training camp there in Henderson and standing there on the concrete and watching some of the defensive drills, as I do quite a bit. And I just kept saying, Max looks faster. Max looks faster. And I know some people probably thought that I was just gassing him up, or, he's working close to the Raiders, so of course everyone looks great. But that wasn't the case. Max just looked a lot faster. Then a little bit later on, we found out that he had sobered up, lost that alcohol weight, and all of a sudden he was faster, and he was playing with a clearer mind, and he was doing a lot of really good things. And the addition of Yannick Ngakoue also helped him as far as competition goes. So I remember that, specifically as being one of those training camp storylines. Like, it wasn't a new player. It's like Max Crosby, we already knew his name and how good he could be, but just just kind of a little nugget about him that he looked a lot faster. So that was one. I know Vinny Bonsignore has talked about Isaiah Palomau. He was the guy that he pointed out a couple training camps ago, right? And my guy Adam Hill was actually a guest on my radio show on Monday, was talking about Lester Cotton. He was talking about him on the offensive line. Was like, man, this dude actually looks really good. And there was a point where the Raiders were pretty high on Lester Cotton and thought that he was going to earn that starting role. He didn't. He's no longer on the team. He's in Miami, but he's actually doing really well there. But there's always somebody who emerges, right? I mean, there was a time when a lot of the fans were big T. Billy fans, right? Get the ball to T. Billy, throw the ball to T. Billy. He's that guy. And no, he wasn't, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't find someone that is stepping up and shining a little bit in training camp that you either want to keep your eye on, or you think that it's going to be a really tough decision when it comes time for the 53-man roster. Man, how are they going to let that guy go? What are they going to do with him? Are they going to try to stash him on the practice squad? If you waive him, another team's going to pick him up. Like, there's always someone who shines in training camp and preseason where, more folks around the league are starting to talk about that player, and makes the decision, at least we think it makes a decision to move on from that player or not, a lot tougher. So those are the three storylines that I'm really paying attention to. Quarterback competition, number one. That's the most important, part of this training camp process, is finding out who's going to be QB1 and And hopefully that's the right guy to lead the Raiders throughout the course of the year. The health of the offensive line, it's got to be healthy for that quarterback to have any kind of protection, any kind of chance. The running game's got to get going. And of course, you just got to have the offensive line be solid. And then who's going to emerge as the player that we aren't talking about right now that we will be talking about by the end of training camp? Adam Hill also pointed out to me on Monday, he thinks, and I said Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker was going to be the guy that we're not really talking about because we heard a lot that he really worked his tail off throughout the course of the offseason, working on his hands and his footwork. And if he did, that's going to pay off in a major way for the success of the offense, obviously, right? That deep threat is just huge. But Adam Hill pointed out Tyree Wilson, and he said, man, I've been next to him the last couple of weeks. A couple times I've been next to him, and he don't even look like the same person. So I have a feeling that the guy that we're going to be talking about is the guy that everyone wanted to talk about last training camp, which was Tyree Wilson. He wasn't a big fan of that pick to begin with, but he thinks that he really could pay off this year just because he looks so much different and he's so much focused and thinks that he could be a real difference maker. So maybe we're not talking about Tyree enough right now, but eventually by the end of camp or the end of preseason, we are talking about him. And if we are, then that's only a good thing as far as I'm concerned. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And we'll hear a lot and maybe hear some of these answers from AP today. But of course, the majority of these answers will come as training camp goes along and we actually see the action out there on the grass. Coming up in segment number 2, ESPN's power rankings. We're not very kind to the silver and black. And this is future power rankings, not just this year, but for multiple years moving forward. We'll talk about it coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for small business, you want to find qualified candidates that are professional and right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open for the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, guess what? You're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional, all on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. They're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into the latest ESPN power ranking that is for the future, really. It's this year and a few years beyond, and it did not do very well for the silver and black. And as an employee of ESPN, I feel like I've been dogging them more times than not, and I don't mean to do that. I'm not trying to do it purposely, but it's just things pop up, and I just some things I just don't agree with, and this ESPN power ranking to me really kind of blew my mind. And let me tell you, we've been ranking everything. Like today on ESPN Radio, we're going to be ranking top 5 jerseys, and we did top 5 quarterbacks, and we've done top 5 fan bases, and we've done top 5 hot dog stands. I mean, it feels like we've ranked everything over the past couple of weeks. We didn't really do hot dog stands, but who knows? That might be the next power ranking that we have, or the next ranking that we have. But this is one that I did not take part of, and ESPN Radio didn't take part of. This is more of guys like Dan Graziano was a big part of this. I know Louis Riddick was a big part of this as well, and there was another guy, and I completely forgot who it was. I did not do that on purpose, but it just happened that way, and really didn't even really get into the article after I saw the nuts and bolts of it, because I really was shocked. And I know someone's going to call right now. It's 707-654-4693, which is the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, and said, Q, why are you shocked by anything that ESPN puts out? They always hate on the Raiders. I get it, right? But still, when you see it, when you hear it, sometimes it's just like really shocking. And the good thing is I've heard it. It's been said to me sometimes about the Raiders, and I'm glad that I'm allowed the platform and have the platform where I can sit there and push back and say, yeah, not really, right? And they don't stop me from doing that. So it's not like they're sitting there just hating on the Raiders just to hate on them. It's more, in my opinion, just uneducated, just don't really know about the nuts and bolts of the team. And again, I mean, I someone could say that about me when it comes to, say, the Cleveland Browns. You can say, yeah, Q, you don't know the nuts and bolts of the Browns. You might, follow the league really closely, but, you don't know what's going on inside that building or got the real pulse of the team, which is not wrong. That's true. So I get it, right? So this is just what happens. But it gives at least then when they hit me up and ask me to be on the show, and they have some questions to ask about the team. I feel like I can at least give them an opinion and pass it along and say, okay, look, this is where you guys went wrong. So at least they do that. But this future power ranking is based on teams' long-term projection. Has the Raiders dead last. There's 32 teams in the league. The Raiders are 32nd. Again, this piece is on ESPN Plus, so if you have that, you can check out the whole thing and really read all their breakdowns. Again, you don't really have a lot to even read and break down when you're ranked 32nd. When you're ranked dead last, it lets you know that they don't really have too much high hopes about you. And again, Louis Riddick, who usually talks pretty highly about the Raiders, was involved in this as well. Dan Graziano was as well, and he's usually pretty reasonable. And I hate that I forgot the other guy who's involved with this, but basically they have the overall Raiders roster ranked 31st out of 32. Quarterback dead last at 32, coaching at 29, and front office 28 out of the 32 teams. And it's funny, you can look at the quarterback situation and say it's unanswered. It's they don't have an answer for it, so we're going to rank it 32nd. Even if I agreed with that, okay, fine. You can have that just because it's unproven. Even though I can look around the league and say, yeah, that situation in Minnesota's unproven, but they did draft their quarterback in JJ McCarthy that they eventually think will take the place of Sam Darnold, be their guy. Okay, fine. So you got that. But we do know all the quarterbacks that were drafted this past April, all 6 of them in top 12, they're not all going to be good. Right? We know that. The numbers will tell you that maybe 1 or 2 of those guys will be good out of all 6. The question is who's it going to be, right? So there's plenty of teams that have questions at the quarterback position. But okay, the Raiders are unsettled. You got them at 32. Fine. Coaching 29. Okay, so you're saying that Antonio Pierce is the 29th best coach in the league and the coaching staff. Okay, I mean, I guess you can go there, but I also say that based off what AP was able to do last year, I feel like he's earned a little bit more than that. But okay, that's more unproven. So okay, 32 for the quarterback, coaching for 29. Cool. The overall roster ranked at 31. I'm not buying that, especially for the next couple of years. Not when you have a defense that, first of all, the defensive roster is already, in my opinion, fantastic. The defensive line in general, right? The linebackers are solid, even though nobody across the league is talking about them. The cornerback is Jack Jones, I believe, is solid, even though nobody's talking about him. Who knows who's going to be the cornerback behind? I think the guys in the back end, when you're looking at Trayvon Merrick and Marcus Epps, they're solid, but of course they're in their final year of the deal. So okay, cool. You got Devontae, and I know that everyone's trying to trade him right now. That's not happening, but you got Devontae, you got Jacoby, you just got the best tight end in college football in Brock Bowers. You had one of the best tight ends in college football the year before in the second round in Michael Mayer. So those two dudes are going to be around for a while, right? I mean, again, you got Zamir White there at the running back position, comes from a national champion in Georgia. You've got some blue chip dudes along that offensive line like Colton Miller, Jackson Powers Johnson, right? Dylan Parham has been solid. Obviously, he's been proven to be solid. So okay, 31st, you're telling me that their roster is that bad. I don't think that their roster is that bad. But this is what really gets me. Out of all that, like you can almost justify all that to me. But the front office, 28 out of 32. I find that hard to believe because when the Raiders hired Tom Telesco, all we heard was glowing reviews about Tom, right? Because there was Raider fans that said, yeah, but look what he did with the Chargers. Look, the Chargers stunk. Look at the Chargers in their salary cap situation. Look at the Chargers this. Look at the Chargers that. Oh, they couldn't hire a head coach. Well, they already have a head coach in place with the Raiders, so that's a really good situation. So everybody that I had on talking about Tom Telesco, whether it was on my radio station or it was on the podcast, was nobody had a bad thing to say about Tom T, right? They all had a lot of respect for him. So how in the hell did he end up 28th, right? He had all that respect, all the talent that he got with the Chargers, and he did bring in a lot of talented dudes for that roster. They just weren't able to put it together. I mean, he ain't coaching the team up. He's not out there playing. He's out there picking the groceries, right? He's out there working with the coach to pick the groceries, what they need, and then ready to go from there. And honestly, that's what I really like about Tom Telesco as I got to know him and I'm starting to, talk to him every once in a while when we see him at practice and I'm sure I'll see him out here in Costa Mesa, is that he is in lockstep with the coach. And that's how he was in LA with the Chargers as well. Like whatever the coach really needs, whatever the identity of the team is, that's what Tom Telesco is trying to go out there and get. And I mentioned that Behind the Shield show the other day when the Raiders had me featured on it quite a bit. And I do appreciate anyone who's checked it out and reached out to me and told me that they thought I did a good job. That means a lot. But Tom Telesco was featured on there quite a bit as well. And that's all he kept talking about when it came to AP was the fact that he has a vision for what he's looking for. He has a vision for this team, and it's my job to go out there and get the right guys and bring the right guys in and fit them into what AP is looking for. And so I feel like he's really in lockstep with Antonio Pierce. And I know a lot of us thought that Champ Kelly was going to get that GM job. He didn't. I think the main reason he didn't get it is just from the lack of experience, and I think that that's the reason why Tom T was brought in, because he does have that experience, and he has put together some really good rosters. The Chargers just weren't able to do anything with it. So, I think that he's going to do some really good things. And I look at the draft class, and of course, we don't know what this draft class is really going to be for a couple of years, but on paper, it looks pretty solid. Right, especially the first couple picks. I'm really excited about those guys. When you look at Brock Bowers, you look at JPJ, hell, even DJ Glaze, I think he plays a pretty significant role. Dylan Lobby in the 6th round, I think is really good. Trey Taylor, that's a guy that has been getting glowing reviews. He was a 7th round pick out of Air Force, a safety. He's been getting glowing reviews as well. I mentioned talking to Adam Hill. He put out a piece in the RJ, the Las Vegas Review Journal, on Trey Taylor when he talked to a few coaches that coached him up there at Air Force, and they were gushing to talk about Trey. Like, oh man, you want to talk about Trey? Let's talk. So I don't know what his specific role will be this year outside of special teams, just like Dylan Lobby. I know that that's the way that those guys will make the roster. If they make the roster, is by way of special teams. But you know what? Those are a couple of guys that we might end up talking quite a bit about when training camp's all said and done. We talked about that in segment number 1. Like, who's the guy that we're not talking about right now that we will be? Maybe it's Dylan Lobby. Maybe it's Trey Taylor. Both of those young dudes, 6th round and 7th round picks, have a role to be contributor, have a chance to be contributors on this Raiders team this upcoming year. But yeah, I was really surprised, and I guess I shouldn't be, but I was really surprised by that ESPN power ranking. And again, if you got ESPN Plus, you can go check it out. But there's not a whole lot to check out because the Raiders are ranked dead last, 32. They were ranked 31st in overall roster. Quarterback was ranked 32nd, coaching 29, front office 28. And so they came out with 32 when it was all said and done. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts. Draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We'll do that after I tell you about FanDuel. And we all know I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. And it's funny, I'm here at this Airbnb in Costa Mesa, and when you're at Airbnbs, you don't have your normal cable hookup. You have some kind of streaming. So I've been like a fiend. I've been going around these channels. I got some live TV antenna channels, and that's really about it. Did pull up some streaming, but it wasn't exactly what I was looking for because, well, it just wasn't live sports. And we know it's this time of year where there's not a whole lot of live sports going on. That's why we're so happy that training camp is back. We know that USA basketball, they're playing. They're barely squeaking out games. They actually have their first Olympic game coming up on Sunday, but they barely squeaked out a game versus Germany. WNBA, they're on break. They're on the Olympic break and All-Star break. So that's not going on. Basically, it's all about baseball. But the good thing with FanDuel, they let me keep sports going whenever I want. All I got to do is open up their app, dream up whatever bet I want to anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts. Draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from Raider Too Much. He's calling to talk about the fact that we've got rules and regulations behind what we can talk about at training camp, at least on the radio we do. Here he is, Raider Too Much.
Yo, Q, what up, dog? It's Raider Too Much, man. I just hate how they not letting us into for the training camp. Like, come on, man. You can do whatever, like you said, you can do whatever you want to do. We run the city, bro. It's not going to change. I just want to tap in on that, man. I heard you talking about it. And, I'm going to try to call the radio show. I work crazy shit, so I don't know if I'll be able to catch it live, and just, do what you said and say what we want to say. But, shout out to Jacob from Hanford. That's my hometown, 559, Southside, Old Home Garden. But, just a shout out to Raider Nation. Let's go, baby. Excited for the year, man. Q, do your thing, dog. We kill it.
Too Much. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, it's pretty silly. right? The Rams, the Chargers, they're trying to flex their territorial muscles and not let the Raiders' strong fan base, have a good time with the Raiders here in Costa Mesa. I'll tell you, man, just from being around town and me walking around a little bit and have my, Raider shirt on or telling folks that, I'll be over at training camp, there's already a buzz about the Raiders here in town. I remember talking to a security guard on Monday morning. I was talking to him just about kind of the setup and his expectations and when he's planning on getting to Jack Hammett, the practice facility. And he's like, man, I'll be here at 6 a.m. But man, I'm so excited about this team being here, so fired up. He had his Raider hat on and everything. So yeah, I mean, there's already a buzz, but it's so funny that the Rams and Chargers are really trying to basically say, yeah, the Raiders, you're not existing here. You don't exist. Basically Raider Nation was about to run the city and run the Rams and the Chargers and their small fan base out of town. But it is what it is. That's what we've got to put up with as far as not really being able to talk about it. But it's not like just because we don't talk about it, not like everyone doesn't know what's going on and where it's going on at. So thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider 570. He says, hey, Q, Raiders 570. Been a couple years since I called in, but still listen to you daily. Want to say thanks for all that you do. Share my story of becoming a Raider fan with you. My dad is a Cowboy fan, somehow also roots for the Raiders in the AFC because of the way they played in the late 80s and early 90s. He had two helmets in the basement growing up, a Cowboys and a Raiders helmet. I remember looking at them both, and what young boy wouldn't put the pirate helmet on instead of the star helmet? Time goes on, and hearing my dad tell me all the stories about how scared people were to play him and how hard they hit inspired me to root for the Raiders and Tatum, then Woodson at a young age to play that way myself. Fast forward 30 years later, my 4-year-old son told me the other day his favorite baseball team was the Pirates because of the logo. Has me feeling like he's growing up in Raider Nation as well. Just wanted to share the full circle moment with the fam. Also, during these years, I hear how dirty my dad was playing playground football. LOL. Go Raiders. That's from Raiders 570, sharing his story of how he became a Raider fan. And pretty cool right there. Cowboy and a Raider helmet in the basement. And you chose the Raider helmet because, well, why wouldn't you, right? That makes all the sense in the world. Love it. And it's cool that your son now is a baseball fan, a Pirates fan, because of the logo as well. So, yeah, sounds like you got another member there of Raider Nation. Thanks for sharing the story. We do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Old Man Pete. He's calling to talk about the Raiders in L.A. and how the NFL is doing the league a disservice by not promoting them. Here he is, Old Man Pete.
Q, this is Old Man Pete from the 818. Hope you've been enjoying your summer. Definitely excited to get football on and cracking here again soon. But I wanted to touch base regarding this covert mission the NFL has the Raiders on here in Southern California and the fact that they're not promoting our team down here in LA. I'm born and raised out here in LA, and I think the NFL is really doing a disservice to their brand by not letting people know and get excited about the fact that the Raiders are here. I know they're trying to protect the Chargers, protect the Rams. I think it's kind of funny that they have to do that. But I think it'd be a really good thing if they just let people know that the Raiders are out here, get NFL fans excited about football being right around the corner. It's been a long summer, and the fact that they're not promoting the Raiders down here, I think is kind of dumb. Let's talk about it. Let's get excited about it. Football's right around the corner. Go Raiders. Let's keep this thing going. LA is a Raider town for sure. I see way more Raider hats and Raider t-shirts from Santa Clarita all the way down in the South Bay all the time. Let's not hide it. Let's promote it. Let's get it going. Go Raiders.
Pete, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And, the funny thing is, like, you're onto something because the thing about it is no matter what Raider fans are in LA, right? No matter what Raider fans are there, and regardless if we promote it, the Raiders promote it, anyone promotes them being there or whatever the case may be, they're still going to be Raider fans, right? Raider fans aren't going to all of a sudden become Charger fans or Rams fans, right? I mean, 99.9% of Raider fans are always going to be Raider fans, regardless of where the Raiders are playing or regardless of where they're living, right? Just because the Rams and the Chargers live here and play here in LA doesn't mean that Raider Nation is going to be like, yeah, you know what? It was cool being a Raider fan, but we got two teams here in LA. I'm going to pull for one of those. It just doesn't, it's not like that with Raider Nation. It might be like that with other teams. And hell, I ain't going to lie. I've met people in Vegas that said, oh, I wasn't a Raider fan, but they're our home team now. So yeah, I want to be a Raider fan now. Cool. That's cool for you. I'm good. I'm good with that. That's cool. It's a nice way to start trying to build up that fan base in Vegas, but that's not really how I was ever cut, right? I'm not really cut like that from that kind of cloth. But again, I mean, that's just kind of what it is. And that's why, we're out there trying to teach new Raider fans what it is about to being a Raider and Raider fans, and give them the Raider history, because there are a lot of new folks like that. But that's not going to help happen with Raider Nation. Raider Nation is not going to be like, yeah, you know what, those Rams pretty good. That Stafford guy, man, he helped the Rams win a Super Bowl. Yeah, I'm gonna be a fan of them. Or the Chargers, man, they got Jim Harbaugh now. Gonna be a fan. Like, it just ain't gonna happen. So yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say it's a disservice that the NFL is doing, but I mean, whenever you promote the Raiders and the Raiders are doing something, somebody's gonna notice, because, well, Raider Nation, that flag, it flies high, as we know. So thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from John C. in Denver. So thank you. Just wanted to chime in on the fact that the Raiders aren't allowed to advertise that they're in SoCal. This shouldn't be a surprise. To me, it's got Kroenke written all over it. This goes back to when the NFL finally decided to move teams back in the LA area. The Rams and Raiders should have been the obvious choices, but Kroenke didn't want to share the market in his stadium with the Raiders. Funny how they waited until Al Davis passed away to go back in that market. Al had always said he owned the LA market, and if you look at the fans there, he was right. The NFL knew they would have a fight on their hands with Al all over it. Once he passed, they swooped right in, and Kroenke pushed the Raiders to Vegas. Doesn't really matter that they can't advertise it. We all know that they're there, and whenever the Raiders play in SoCal, it's a home game. Keep up the good work and go Raiders. That's John C. in Denver. I don't really have much to say except for you're spot on. You're spot on. That is a fantastic point that you brought up. I don't think that it's even been brought up too many times, that whole breakdown that you just gave right there. I'm honestly happy that the Raiders aren't sharing a stadium with the Rams like the Chargers are. I know that it would have been awesome to have them here in LA. Don't get me wrong, but I'm so glad that they've got their own stadium. And, I like Las Vegas. I'm learning to love Las Vegas. And the stadium fits perfect with it. The Raiders fit perfect there in Las Vegas, but LA would have been incredible if they had returned to LA, but I sure didn't want them sharing a stadium with the Rams or anyone else. Didn't think that they deserved or needed to share a stadium. I think they deserve to have their own stadium like they do. So you bring up some really good points, though, John. Thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. And let's close out with a call from Sucker Free Raider. It's a quick one. He's calling to talk about the convo that we had on, or that we didn't have, but they had on First Take on Friday that I played on the podcast on Monday about wide receivers. Then got into some Raiders talk as well. So here you go, Sucker Free Raider.
Hey, what's up, Q? Sucker Free Raider, man. Just heard the podcast for the day, and they were playing the clips about, talking about the wide receivers where Devontae said he was number one, Jefferson was number two. Man, it's just constant disrespect, bro. Like, when they were talking about, Jefferson is the man. He's the dude, even Devontae says. But, they're talking about Devontae can't be number one because of his quarterback. And these are supposed to be like, sports professionals. Do they know who his quarterback is? A rookie that nobody's even seen in the NFL yet? So, I mean, come on, man. It's probably an even playing field, I guess, right there. You feel me? So, I don't know, man. Just had to vent real quick. Yeah, go Raiders.
Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And really good point. Devontae got knocked for his quarterback, and the Vikings quarterback is Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy. We all know who Darnold is. Minshew is better than Darnold, in my opinion, right? Sam Darnold is only in the league because he's a quarterback, right? He's just not very good. We know who Sam Darnold is. Gardner Minshew, again, as I mentioned, he is better, in my opinion. Aiden, he's obviously still unproven, but at least he's won some games in the league. J.J. McCarthy hasn't thrown a pass in the league yet. So I know the expectations are high for him. He was obviously a first-round pick, so they're going to give him a little bit more love there. But, I mean, at the end of the day, Aiden O'Connell might end up being the better quarterback out of the two. Again, I mentioned it before. All the quarterbacks that were selected in April's draft aren't going to be fantastic quarterbacks. But thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. That was a quick one, so we'll close out with a text from Behind Enemy Lines. Said, Q, big fan. Love all the Raiders news and updates. Lifelong Raider fan from Kansas. Regarding the First Take clip that you shared, putting Devontae at third best receiver because of his quarterback situation, if they really believe that, then it makes no damn sense to put Jefferson at number one. Who's his quarterback? Darnold? A rookie? McCarthy? Devontae is number one, and on any team he plays on, period. Raiders, and that's from Behind Enemy Lines. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. And I didn't have a problem with them putting him at number three. I really didn't. I think Justin Jefferson is fantastic. Tyreek Hill still has speed to kill. We know that speed is incredible that he has. He's a video game. And I think Devontae is fantastic, right? I don't think being top three wide receiver out of 32 teams in the league is a bad thing. I think that's still really good. But to your point, and the point that we had before from Sucker Free Raider, if you're going to knock Devontae for his quarterback, you have to knock Justin Jefferson for his quarterback. So that's a great point. Like I said, I don't have any problem with being ranked number 3 out of the top 3, or like out of the top 5 being ranked number 3. So be it. That's cool, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But again, just be consistent, right? If you're going to knock one for the quarterback, you've got to knock the other one for the quarterback as well. Thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. That's all we got time for on today's show. Tomorrow we'll have more calls and texts on the show. We'll have some breakdowns from AP, whatever he's got to say today. Remember, he's talking at noon. We'll have more conversation as well, and get ready for the very first day of actual Raiders training camp at the Jack Hammett Sports Complex here in Costa Mesa, where I'm at right now. We'll be for, well, quite a while, for like 20 days or so, be out here. So, yeah, got a lot to unpack and a lot to talk about, but it'll take the Raiders getting on that field before we could talk about any of it. But we will hear from Antonio Pierce later on today. Again, thanks so much for making the Locked On Raiders podcast your first listen. You want to catch up on any team throughout the league, you can. The Locked On Podcast Network has all 32 teams represented, has over 200 official shows, right, from college to draft shows to different sports like hockey and basketball and Major League Baseball, whatever the case may be. The Locked On Podcast Network has you covered. Of course, it's your team every day. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.